All right, hello and welcome back to NBA Hockey. If you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple and Spotify, or wherever else this is posted, thank you for coming back and joining me here to kind of talk about the playoffs. First of all, there won't be a live video accompanying this. It's just easier just to record the audio and throw it up. So if you're on YouTube, you can put this on in the background. You can go to Apple or Spotify. Links are in the description. You can find the audio only if you want to do that. If you want to keep it on YouTube and just have it on in the background, that works too, but there won't really be anything to look at on the screen. This will just be me yapping about the playoffs here for a couple minutes, and I want to start doing more of these where it's just like 20-25 minutes of me just kind of talking every couple days, going through a couple of the stories that are going on. There won't be like a set schedule or anything, but it'll just be very casual, kind of just dissecting the news of the NHL in the last little bit. So if that's something that you're interested in, then stick around. But yeah, we're going to jump into all the playoff series. Obviously, everything but Edmonton and Anaheim is in game two, so we have a decent idea of what each of these series are going to look like so far here before we start into the game threes tonight. So we start off here. We'll start off in the West with Colorado and LA, and this has been the most chalky series, I think, in terms of what's been happening. But I think, in terms of how they're playing, I think Kings fans need to be very happy with what they've gotten out of their team so far. I think this is about as good of a result as you could expect if you're LA, against a team that's like significantly better than you are. Obviously, Colorado, 62.1 expected goals percentage through 5-5 in the first two games is pretty significant. But I mean, they've won both games 2-1. LA is just kind of hanging in there. They're doing very much what they've done all playoffs, where they're just hanging around, hoping for the best, and hoping to get that one bounce. It's basically how they got into the playoffs. And they're doing that again, and they're doing that very well. I think people are kind of surprised at these scores. I'm not. I kind of expected these games to be close just because of the way that the Kings play. They're very, the expected goals numbers are what they are, but a lot of that is due to the fact that, one, LA is just not generating any kind of offense, so their percentages aren't going to be very good in that sense. But you also have, a team that's just allowing a lot of shots, right? Like the Kings are giving up, a very big quality of shots. They're averaging 30.82 shots per 60 minutes, which is second, only behind the Oilers, who've only played one game, obviously. And then on the other hand, the Kings are sitting at 21, so it's a pretty big difference there in terms of almost a 10 shot difference per 60 minutes in the first two games in favor of the Colorado Avalanche. So yes, the expected goals numbers make the series look very lopsided, and it has been. I mean, LA's been just kind of weathering the storm here, but in terms of like crazy, like high danger chances, they aren't giving up a ton of them, and that's just kind of what their MO has been. They're just going to hang around, and then eventually, hope to get a bounce. So far, they haven't. Would I be shocked if they're able to split in LA? Not really. I think there's a possibility of them winning a game. I picked them to lose in 5, so I think splitting in LA makes sense in terms of how I predicted the series to go. But I really I think as of right now, the odds are that overwhelmingly that Colorado wins this in either 4 or 5. I think that seems fair, but I think if you're a Kings fan, you got to be pretty happy with what you're seeing overall from this team. They're playing about as well as I think we could have expected them to, and they're hanging around. So, does my prediction change at all? No, I think Colorado wins the series, probably in 4 or 5. Dallas, Minnesota has been a fascinating series. The first game was about as expected for a Dallas Stars game 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs as you can expect. And you really had to think that, like, especially based on how their playoffs ended last year with, the whole Pete DeBoer stuff, taking out Jake Ottinger early in their final game against Edmonton, you really had to think that, like, that start was not what the Stars wanted and not what they needed, especially based on the fact that, like, Ottinger's had, a rougher season this year, and not having that stability in that, like, great game 1 possibly could cast some doubt in what this series looks like. They obviously bounced back in game two. They got a big win there. This is going about as I expected it to, right? Like you look at the odds on this series, 21% that the Stars win in seven, 19% they win in six, and then 18% that Minnesota wins in six. So that's 17 that Minnesota wins in seven. So it's very much still anybody's series. HockeyStats.com has the Stars at 54% to win this one. That feels fine based on the fact they have home ice. The question is, can Jake Ottinger steal a game now? Right, like he had kind of a stinker in game one, and I don't think it was necessarily all his fault. Like I don't think he was, a reason for a lot of those goals. Maybe one or two of them you'd want back, but he also didn't steal any moments for them in that game. But he also hasn't done much in game two even to try to steal them a game here. And I think you look at Jake Ottinger, and I think a lot of people point to the series against, I believe it was Calgary, years ago, where he almost single-handedly won that series. And that's kind of what we've come to expect now. That shine has been on Ottinger since that moment, and I think a lot of people are expecting him to be able to do that again. And as of now, we haven't seen that kind of play from him. So I really think if Dallas wants, I mean, we can talk about Dallas's blue line, right? Like the need for kind of that fourth guy, and obviously bringing Tyler Myers, and that's been okay. And we can poke holes in like all the margin stuff for this team, but at the end of the day, if Dallas is going to beat Minnesota and eventually beat Colorado, and then possibly whoever comes out of the Pacific and then win a Stanley Cup, they need Jake Ottinger to be at his best, and he just isn't right now through two games. So do I think that they can squeak their way through a round one series? Yeah, sure. Jesper Wallstedt's been good, but he hasn't been a world beater either, right? Like he's sitting at a 1.24 goals saved above expected through two games, which is good for seventh in the playoffs, about mid table. And he's been fine. I don't think there's really any criticism of him. I think he was kind of the right choice for this series. I like the boldness of it, but I also think that his style actually fits an opponent like this a lot better than Gustafsson did. So I don't have any problems with that. But again, he hasn't been a world beater, so that gives Dallas a chance, right? Pound for pound, I think Dallas is the better roster. And it's going to come down to which goalie can kind of steal a game or two here. And neither have been able to do that on either side yet. Game one was just the Stars kind of getting caved in, and game two was a lot closer. It's going to come down to if a goalie can steal one here, and that's what I think the series ultimately is going to go to. I had the Wild in 7. I'm going to stick with that. I think Jesper Wallstedt has the ability to step up and take a game. I'm more confident in him doing that than Ottinger doing it. But I think Game 3 is a big one in terms of how this series plays out. Vegas, Utah. Currently, the odds-on projection here is 56% for Vegas to win this series, which is fine. Vegas has played better than I thought they would. Through two games, I really thought that Utah's speed was going to be the downfall of Vegas in the series, and just not being able to keep up with that. And so far, Vegas has kind of answered that bell, I think. Game 2 is a bit more Utah dominant than most of Game 1 was. And I think, the start of Game 1 as well was something to kind of keep an eye on. I think Utah really came out fast at the start of Game 1, and then Vegas's experience was just able to kind of like take over that game. But you look at Game 2, and the expected goals in that game were 3.1 to 2 for Utah. Shots were 29-21. Shot attempts 57 to 50. So a close enough game in terms of what we saw there. I'm very interested to see how Utah now comes into their home rink in front of a crowd that's going to be energized, and see how they can kind of take over that building, right? Like, I think the Game 3, again, is going to be a big one in this series, just to see how Utah can react to that crowd. Again, a lot of guys that don't have any playoff experience, and none of these guys have played in this building before in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how the building reacts to that, and how the players can kind of feed off that, and turn that into some excitement. Obviously, they have the 2 days off here. They don't play till the 24th, which I actually think will be good for Utah to kind of let them kind of reset here and get ready for that game. But I picked Utah to win the series. I feel fine about that. I do think that the speed aspect came more into light in game 3, or in game 2 rather, and we'll see if Vegas can kind of hold up. Obviously, them kind of loading up that top line of Marner, Eichel, and Stone has been a pretty good weapon for them. In game 1, their depth was able to balance that out and take advantage of it. Game 2 was not nearly as much the case, so I think that's a big thing here for Vegas. If they can get that depth scoring, and they can get some of those guys at the bottom of this lineup, like a Cole Smith and Nick Dowd who scored, Colton Sissons who had a goal. If those guys can kind of lift their play up and help offset the fact that putting Marner, Eichel, and Stone on the line together is gonna not dilute some of the talent in this roster. That could be a big bonus here for Vegas. But I'm curious to see what game 3 looks like in this series. I think it's a lot closer than a 56-44 split as HockeyStats.com has it. I still like my pick of Utah winning this series. I think they if they can take advantage of the home ice advantage, this could be a big game 3 and big game 4. Finally, Edmonton and Anaheim. We only have one game in this series. I was impressed by the Oilers' pushback. I don't have the actual stat, but I think this is. I did see somewhere that this was one of the few, if not the only game that the Oilers won this year with McDavid not getting a point in it. If they've done it before, it hasn't been very often. This was a game I think the Ducks needed to steal, because McDavid's going to have some big games at some point, and being able to kind of quiet him down and basically make him not an impact player on the scoreboard at all, and losing, I think essentially lost in this series. As much as I think the Ducks didn't have much of a shot going into this series, those are games that you have to steal, and the Ducks just weren't able to do that. So I think that was kind of their one shot to steal a game in this one. I don't think they're going to get an opportunity like that again. I can't see a game where McDavid's just a non-factor essentially again in this series. And if he is, they need to take advantage of that, and they just weren't able to do it in game 1. I don't. Again, there's only been one game in this series, so it's harder to kind of get a full picture of what this one's going to look like. But that really felt like it should have been their game to steal, and even then, I'd still take the Oilers in this one. But especially with a lot of the question marks about the Oilers roster, getting that first win really would have cast a lot of doubt in what Edmonton's doing. And now, even if they lay an egg at some point in this series, that doubt just isn't going to be the same throughout that room because of the way Game 1 went. So a missed opportunity for Anaheim here, especially when they had the lead. But good on the Oilers' depth, which I've been very critical of for stepping up and winning them Game 1. Boston, Buffalo. This one's been fun, man. First of all, the center ice goal by Morgan Geekie in Game 2 was peak Buffalo, really. And Boston was the best team in Game 1 too, right? I think Boston's been the better team in the series throughout it. I picked I picked Boston to win the series at the start. It's been close. You look at the expected goal splits. It's 50.5 for Buffalo, 49.5 for Boston. So it's been about as close as you want. They're 8-9 in the stat through 2 games. But I think going back to Boston could be a big game changer for this team. Jeremy Swayman's been fantastic. He's been one of the best goalies in the league this year, period. And he's had a really strong showing. Obviously, the way Game 1 went, was a really tough ending for a Bruins team that was the better team through most of the game, all up until the 5-minute stretch where everything fell apart. And in game 2, they kind of came out and played a pretty strong 60-minute hockey game. I'm really intrigued to see how Boston, or how Buffalo rather, handles the environment at TD Garden. I think again, Game 3 is going to tell us a lot about the series in a 1-1 split. That's usually how it works. I still like my pick of the Bruins winning this series. HockeyStats.com has them only at 42%. But I think they've been the better team overall in this series, very, very slightly. Obviously, the 5-minute thrashing by Buffalo in Game 1, notwithstanding, I think throughout the entire series, the Bruins have been the better team aside from that moment. And I trust their goaltending to bail them out of tough situations a lot more than I do Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Alex Lyon. So we'll see. I mean, it's been an interesting series to watch so far. Obviously, Buffalo's been absolutely on fire. The atmosphere in there has just been incredible. Seeing fans, tackling, dummies outside the stadium has been hilarious. But I'm just really intrigued to see how they handle the road environment. And I think it could go one of two ways. Either Buffalo's going to embrace it and kind of the pressure of being in that home environment will kind of be taken off their shoulders a little bit. Or it's just going to be an insane atmosphere in Boston. And especially now that they've seen what Buffalo looks like, I think the fans there are going to want to top what Buffalo's been doing. And that could run into some problems. Obviously, the Bruins have a bit more experience, from the leaders in that room, although it's not obviously the Bruins team of old. I just think that a loss in Game 3 would be devastating to what the Sabres are trying to do here, and it's going to be tough if Game 3 doesn't go their way. Tampa Bay, Montreal. Man, this has been a fun series. 2 overtime games. I don't think you can really complain about that. It's been about as close as I expected it to be. Jakub Dobeš has been fine. Andre Vasilevsky, I think, has been, about as Andre Vasilevsky-ish as he's been in the playoffs the last couple of years. And people don't really want to talk about that a ton, but the reality is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see how the Canadians react to playing in the Bell Center. We saw it make a big impact last year, where they ended up splitting against Tampa Bay, or against Washington rather. I expect them to split the 2 games in Montreal. To be honest with you, I had Tampa in 7 in the series, and I feel like that's still a decent prediction. The concern I have for Montreal is the fact that they basically got caved in the back half of that game in Game 2. Tampa was the significantly better team in overtime, obviously, the 9-0 outshooting, and I thought they were also the better team in the third period. If the Canadians' biggest strength so far has been their power play, it's accounted for most of their goals through the series so far. They only have 2 goals, 5-on-5. I really do worry about that, because as the series is going to go on, and as officiating goes in the NHL, refs are going to put their whistles away as the games get bigger. That's a trend. People point to there's more penalties in the playoffs. Yeah, because there's more penalties called in Game 1, 2, and 3 of each series, and then 4, 5, 6, and 7, the penalties slowly start to deteriorate game by game up until the end, where there's just, you can do whatever you want. Unless you kill somebody, you're probably not going to the box. And for a team that's been so reliant on their power play, at least so far in this series, that worries me in terms of what they can look like. And Tampa Bay's taken a lot of penalties. They've given them opportunities. And I think that both those things are going to drop as this thing goes on. I think that Tampa is going to be able to get away with a lot more, and Montreal needs to be able to figure out how to win 5-on-5 the way they did in the first 2 periods, and especially in the first period of Game 2. And if they can do that, then they still have a chance in this thing. But they need Dobish to really steal one. He almost stole it in overtime in game 2. But if Andre Vasilevsky is going to look human, you need to be able to take advantage of that. And the other thing that kind of concerns me at this point is the fact that we finally got a Nikita Kucherov goal in the playoffs, and that could be really dangerous because if he can get going, the Canadians haven't had an answer for him yet in this series. So that's going to be a big thing. The fact that Montreal's top line of Caulfield, Suzuki, Slavkovsky, one of the better first lines in the league this year, is sitting below 50% in expected goals is tough. You need that line to be your kind of driving force. We'll see if the matchup battle can help them back in Montreal. Obviously, Tampa Bay has been able to scheme around them, and Slavkovsky was able to get the 3 goals on the power play, as he did. But again, all 3 of those came on the power play, right? So that's still a factor there in terms of how effective this team can be. So I'm curious to see if how the matchups work in this series heading back to Montreal. But I think that'll be a big indicator of how this thing goes. But Montreal definitely needs to be able to win the 5-on-5 battle through 60 minutes, and they haven't been able to do that really in either game so far this series. Carolina-Ottawa has been another fun one. It's really funny how the narratives just kind of flipped around the Senators, right? Like all season, and me included, was talking about how this team just had to win. They were one of the better 5-on-5 teams in the league. They just needed, league average goaltending to turn them into a top team, and it's really funny how that's completely flipped for this team. I mean, the Senators in the regular season were 4th in the NHL with a 55.2 expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5. And then, through 2 games, they're 12th in the league at 46.5%, right? They've had a 10% drop in terms of their expected goals numbers. But the goaltending's been great, right? Like Linus Ullmark's number 2 behind Frederik Andersen, who we'll talk about in a second, in terms of goals saved above expected through 2 games. And it's really funny how the whole narrative around this team has flipped. And I think the Hurricanes were like the worst possible matchup for them, simply because of like the only other team that's been better than them in terms of their 5-on-5 play, in terms of their expected goals for percentage in the NHL from the Eastern Conference has been Carolina, right? It's Colorado, Carolina, Vegas, and then Ottawa, right? So it's like literally the only team that they couldn't afford to play in this situation. They're playing in round 1, and it's made for extremely, extremely entertaining hockey. The double overtime game was fantastic. I definitely felt like this was the series that was going to get a game like that. And both teams, the biggest question about both these teams has been goaltending. And man, I mean, if Carolina can be caving in, one of the best 5-on-5 teams in the NHL, the way that they are in this series, and they can get the Frederik Andersen level goaltending that we've been seeing, they're going to be very hard out, right? They were my cup pick going into the playoffs, and this is through 2 games, I'm feeling exceptionally confident about that. I think that they've been the best team through 2 games in the playoffs so far. Colorado's a bit of an edge case because they're playing a team that's like built on getting caved in a bit 5-on-5. So I think the numbers are a bit inflated for what Colorado's been doing, just based on their opponent. But I think based on the quality of the opponent that they're playing, the Carolina Hurricanes have been the most impressive team in these playoffs so far, and I'm very happy about that because they've been able to win both games. I still think the series goes long. I still have faith that the Senators, until you lose at home, you're really not in trouble. And based on, how good Ottawa's, proof of concept was through the regular season, I have confidence that they can turn this around. And if they can keep getting good goaltending from Ullmark and they can kind of figure out how to control play a bit better in this series, then they're fine. And I mean, the controlling play thing has been something they've been doing well all year. So I'm not, I don't think that's a big ask for them to be able to kind of round that out. And finally, we have maybe the most surprising series, the Battle of Pennsylvania, which everybody was super excited about, obviously, going in just because the history and the rivalry here. But the Philadelphia Flyers have just been kind of manhandling the Penguins. People talk all the time about how important experience is in the playoffs, and how important having veterans around to make plays and to be leaders in this room are, and everybody talks about that all the time. And then you see Sidney Crosby losing his mind at the end of game one. And you're kind of like, you have like if you were to pick one player in the NHL that you want like leading your team in a big game that is never going to lose his cool, like Sidney Crosby's number one on that list, and you see him losing his mind at the end of game one with Travis Sanheim, and that's absolutely surprising to me. And it kind of just throws all that out the window, right? I think the veteran leaders, you need guys who have been here before argument kind of got thrown out of the window when Sidney Crosby did that. And as of right now, like the Penguins have two players on their team who have an expected goals for percentage above 50%. One of them is Connor Clifton, who's played 25 minutes, and the other is Brian Rust, who has played 27. And 12 and 13 minutes per game between the two of them. They're both at 0% goals for percentage. It's it's not good, right? They both been on the ice for a goal against. They both have been on the ice for a goal for. And everybody else on this team is below 50%. The Flyers have been the better team, like through everything, and you're sitting here relying on a goalie in Stuart Skinner, who's had his playoff issues, and I think he's been fine in this series. He's faced a lot of odd man rushes. It's something that's been kind of brought up. His goal save of expected numbers aren't great. That's just based on how the math is. Stuff like breakaways and stuff, just it's more shot location and stuff that factors into it. So things like that get underrated in this situation. I think he's been better than his numbers suggest. But I don't think he hasn't stolen any games for them. He hasn't, nothing like that in that sense. Whereas Dan Vladar's he's been fine, right? He's done what he had to do to get the Flyers 2 wins on the road. And, heading back to Philly now, even if they split in Philly, which I think is probably the most likely outcome in this situation, man, the Penguins don't look good. Like their blue line has just been a mess. Letang hasn't looked very good. Erik Karlsson's been awful. Crosby really hasn't shown up in either of these games in an impactful way. I mean, I think Evgeny Malkin's been fine, but this is really a team that kind of coasted for a good portion of the end of the regular season because they had that number 2 seed locked up and they knew they weren't going to catch Carolina. And I think that kind of did a disservice to them, right? Like if there's any team through 2 games of the Stanley Cup playoffs here who should be complaining about the playoff format, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins because they didn't have much to play for at the end of the year. And I think that's hurt them. And it's because they were kind of locked into this position. Even if they would have been like the 7 seed in a 1-8 format. They were locked in that second Metro spot for quite a while, and not having that urgency has hurt them. The Philadelphia Flyers came in really hot. This was a tough series for me to pick. It was kind of a coin flip series for me. I went with the Penguins' veteran leadership, and if there was one series that I'd like to change my prediction for at this point through 2 games, it's absolutely this one. I think it would take a monumental collapse at this point for the Flyers to lose this thing. They've looked like the better team through 2 games, and they have the benefit of now going home, right? Like you look at the other series that are 2-0, right? Like Carolina, Ottawa, for instance, like it's 2-0 Carolina. The games have been very close, and Ottawa's going home, right? Even the LA Colorado series, right? Like as non-close as it's been and non-competitive as it's been in terms of the underlying stuff, both games have been 1 goal, and now LA can match up better. This is a tough situation for the Penguins to be in because they lose that matchup advantage, and they've just been the worst team. And I have a lot of trouble seeing how the Penguins can get themselves out of this one. But with Game 3 coming up tonight, it'll be interesting to see if maybe they can figure it out, and maybe this is where we get the absolute veteran presence push by Crosby, and they can kind of turn this thing around. So there you go. That's kind of my look at the playoff series here through 2 games. If we get a couple game sevens, maybe I'll touch on those before they get passed on. Otherwise, I'll probably make another one of these at the start of round 2, kind of going over what I think. But those are kind of my early thoughts on how the playoffs have been going. So if you enjoyed this, leave a like. Make sure you follow on YouTube. You can also follow me on Instagram. I'm posting on Instagram all the time now. All those links will be in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Apple and Spotify, just look up NBA Hockey on anywhere. I'm also on Twitter. Sometimes I tweet out there. But yeah, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.